Well, Denise Bode is a nationally recognized energy policy expert and a former corporation commissioner for the state of Oklahoma. In January of 2009, Bode took the reins of the American Wind Energy Association, a Washington, D.C. based organization that promotes wind energy across the country. Is wind energy as much about economic development as it is our renewable energy policy?
Well, it's both. Renewable electricity is a brand, and manufacturers who build the 8,000 component parts are looking at states and at countries that have a policy in place that really provides a long-term commitment to renewables, because the people that are trying to recruit them to come to either their state or their country around the world are trying to get them to spend billions of dollars to build manufacturing facilities and hire people to work in long-term jobs. And so where they decide to site those plants is really very dependent upon having a long-term public policy in place. We think a renewable electricity standard is a brand, and we know that siting companies look for that brand in a state, or when they're looking to site in a country, that kind of commitment. And so we're working on that both at the national level in Congress, as well as I came today to urge Oklahoma to make that commitment to wind energy, just like we've made that commitment as Oklahoma to our heritage industries.
So what are the steps that we need to take here in Oklahoma to move more wind energy into our state?
Well, I think you have to say to those manufacturers, by passing a renewable electricity target here in Oklahoma, that you've got a long-term commitment to the wind industry in this state. That is the most important thing you do. Obviously, continuing to support wind as you do other, natural gas and oil through tax policy is always critically important. Any jobs policies are critically important. Making sure that you've got favorable policies for siting, transmission, and for generation, and that you're respectful of the fact that that they're going to basically create a whole new manufacturing sector. So just as you try to attract in other manufacturers, you look at what they might need to put package together, both at state level but in local communities and stuff. Obviously, big parts, big turbines, big towers. So transportation policy also plays a role. Whether you have policies that allow people to transport those parts and equipment in a positive way. So there's a variety of things I think that you can do, but the most important thing bringing people here in the first place is having that statewide policy that says we welcome wind.
And you believe that attitude is already present here in the heart of America?
Unbelievable support. The Sooner survey done by Cole Hargraves and Snodgrass, a Republican polling firm here in Oklahoma, just came out with a major survey on wind in particular, but also on renewables, talking about Oklahoma's favor. And I think 91% of Oklahomans favored having more wind development in their state, and I think 67% said that they would support a national renewable electricity standard being put in place. So I think there's a real understanding. Very interesting, I think, when I was first working on wind generation at the Oklahoma Corporation Commission, was working with the utilities. Oklahoma Gas and Electric did polling, and they did polling looking at what constituents' attitudes were towards wind. And the attitude was very positive because wind was considered a heritage industry in Oklahoma because it had produced water. And so water was such a positive, and the wind turbines and the windmills that we saw at those times was such a positive thing that when people started talking about using the wind to harness electricity, they thought, wow, that's just another positive thing we think we can do with our wind. And so there's overwhelming support in Oklahoma, probably even more so than some of the surrounding states. So I think, that the public will welcome their elected officials paying attention to what they're saying and enacting those state policies that further encourage wind development and wind manufacturing jobs.
And according to the survey, even willing to dig a little deeper in their pocketbook to make sure they have some green energy.
Oh, absolutely. It's what's so interesting is you actually end up saving consumers money by adding wind to your portfolio, but even if they said they had to pay more up front to get new transmission built or do some of the things, the upfront costs, when you're building out, making new capital investments, they said they'd even be willing to do that, I think up to $6 a month, to try to build more renewable generation. They supported it so much because they see the job potential, because those jobs, the energy source is infinite. So you will have energy that will be available for now on, and you create manufacturing jobs basically catering to an infinite source of energy. I mean, that's really a no-brainer.
And I want to ask you about something that you said, that it's actually going to be less expensive with having wind energy in our energy portfolio?
Oh, absolutely, because in fact, Oklahoma Gas and Electric has done in 2 recent rate cases I saw in the last year or so, made filings in both Oklahoma and Arkansas that the wind generation that they've brought on has actually reduced people's bills by millions of dollars. And I think it's because once you bring wind into your portfolio, you basically have long-term certainty on what the cost will be. And so as you have volatile fuel prices from your other generation sources, whether it be coal or natural gas or whatever, those prices go up and down, then basically the cost of wind can actually reduce those costs. But the one thing is really wonderful for a utility, it's great certainty for the consumer and for the utility as to what the cost will be.
Certainly. Because of the way the wind blows here in this part of the country, it blows more in the spring and the fall, and not as much in our high energy need much in the summer and the winter. Will wind always be a supplemental source of energy, or could it ever become a primary source?
Wind is actually, that's the whole idea of why you need basically a vibrant transmission grid. Because, small countries in the European Union, which are the size of our states here in the United States, are already relying as much as 30 or 40% when you talk about Spain on wind generation. And the concept is that, wind didn't blow the same way or at the same speeds or at the same times, even all across the state of Oklahoma. If you've got a vibrant grid that's basically interconnected across an entire region, particularly in the windy part of our region here in the Southwest, you actually can support a tremendous amount of wind as really a baseload supply that balances out. Now, will you ever go to 100% wind? Not likely, but the opportunity for having wind blowing, on the Gulf Coast of Texas versus, the plains of Texas versus the panhandle of Oklahoma versus, Woodward, Oklahoma versus, you go all across the state of Oklahoma, Altus, Oklahoma, the plants down there and around Kansas, the Great Plains of Kansas. You've got that grid interconnected just like they do in Spain and in the European Union. The wind balances, and they use computers and they balance the wind. So when it comes up here, because wind is very predictable.
So we know that we have lots of wind. We know that we're getting better all the time at being able to capture it. Is that vibrant transmission line, is that the last leg of the table?
It's absolutely a part and parcel of that. The Texans figured out, again, ahead of us, they have passed their CREZ project where they're building new transmission all across the state to help pull and build a more vibrant transmission grid. So yes, the transmission is a key link in having that in place, and that's why we think it's so important in the energy bills that we've been working on, in the climate and energy bills they've been working on the last year or so in Congress. In the Senate passed bill, there's very strong language that really provides support for having high voltage transmission and new transmission, upgrading our transmission grid, making it a smart transmission grid. There's huge support for that on both the House and the Senate side and in the White House and administration. The president, I mean, can you imagine, for me, as somebody being an energy nerd, for 30 years I've done energy work, and in the last probably 15 years, really a tremendous amount in the electricity area. Can you imagine having a candidate running for office, particularly the President of the United States, talking about the need for electric transmission? I mean, I thought I was hearing things, you know? I mean, it's so exciting to be here at this time, the great opportunity we have for those of us who've talked about having a national energy policy to really seeing one actually being put in place that adds to our portfolio an American, a homegrown resource like wind and solar and other renewables that can help just expand and diversify an already good portfolio of energy resources.